So, team, welcome to the session on practical cloud security assessment on AWS cloud platform. So, my name is Krish. I'll be a speaker for this whole session. And just to give you my background, I've been working in IT since, for the last 17, 18 plus years. And I'm primarily enterprise cloud architect. I support companies to move to cloud platform, design their cloud security posture, and design their cloud governance strategy. And kind of stuff like that. And also, I do trainings for various things in cloud computing, specifically in cloud security, cloud auditing, and all. And for more information, you can visit my LinkedIn profile, which is shown here. That's it. So, team, in the session, the plan is like this. We are actually planning to have a understanding of what is the need of a cloud security assessment and why we have to basically perform one, what is the process, what all documents you need, and how to basically perform this activity in reality. That is basically what we will learn in high level. So first of all, team, the most important point is that when talking about the word called as a cloud security assessment, okay, the first concern we have is called as a cloud security, right? When you basically go to any cloud platform like Amazon or Azure or anywhere, the biggest concern we have is the security. Okay, and the reason why we say that we have a lot of security challenges in the cloud computing is because, team, the cloud computing is designed in such a way that we have a shared responsibility model. As you all know that when you basically go to a cloud platform, we have something called as a shared responsibility model, right? Like, in fact, we are sharing the responsibility with the cloud service providers. We are basically having a lot of parties in between, like we have a cloud brokers, we have a cloud auditors, we have a cloud monitoring tools, SIM tools. A lot of things are there basically in between me and the cloud service provider. So a lot of responsibilities are basically shared between all of these entities. Okay, and that is the reason, one major factor. And by the way the cloud is designed, it is also having a lot of risk, which is basically increasing. So whenever you go to cloud platform, team, you have a lot of threats, vulnerabilities, and risk in the cloud computing. Yeah, when you basically talk about the word called as a vulnerability, team, let's suppose that now we have a data in our system, and basically if the data is not having a proper protection enabled for our critical data, obviously the data is not having lack of security controls is a weakness, it's a vulnerability, right? So basically when you have a vulnerability or a weakness or an entry point to the attackers, that can lead to what? That can basically lead to a threat. Like, in fact, I'll just, let's suppose that we have a system here. Let's suppose this is my computer I'm having here, and this computer is basically connected to the internet, and I don't have a firewall here. So what basically happens, team? So I have a critical system which is basically public to the internet, and I don't have a firewall or a security control. So not having a firewall or a security control is basically what? It's a weakness, right? It's basically not having a security control mechanism is a vulnerability, and that can be utilized by what? A threat, an action which is basically exploiting this particular vulnerability, and it will lead to an impact called as a risk, right? It will definitely lead to an impact called as a risk. Like, for example, now in this system, okay, if we have a critical data, so that particular critical data is accessible to the attackers is a threat. And what attackers will do? Attackers will basically, publish it to the internet. It will make a breach of confidentiality and all, right? So like this, we have a lot of threats and basically vulnerabilities. And in fact, when you go to the cloud computing, the biggest challenges we are having is the team, the cloud is generically increasing the level of risk we are having. Ransomware attack, multi-tenancy, but ransomware attack can happen for on-premise also, right? So we can have a multi-tenancy, we can have a misconfigurations. Yes, we can have a multi-tenancy, we can have a misconfigurations, we can have like lack of proper specific security controls, lack of cloud knowledge, lack of shared responsibility understanding. Like this, you have a lot more threats when you basically go to cloud computing. And in fact, when you basically go for this, obviously maybe think, Krish, if you have this much amount of risk in the cloud platform, then why do you want to go for it? Let's keep it in the on premises. So as I say in my every session, obviously, like the risk you're taking, you get that much amount of benefits. So the benefit is basically more than the risk you're taking. That's the reason why most people want to go to cloud computing. And in fact, almost every organization, almost 80% organization worldwide is using some form of a cloud computing. Right. Okay. Let's first of all talk about some specific cloud threats actually. So first of all, team, the first and the most important threat we have in cloud computing is the team. We have something called as a data breach. So let's suppose that I'm currently working as a part of an organization. Okay, it can be any company. Okay, I'm working as a part of an organization, and my organization is basically storing some data in the cloud platform. Okay, it can be their sensitive data or critical data, private data, whatever it is, they are sending some critical data to the cloud platform. So due to many reasons, if the data is getting any unauthorized access, like let me give an example. Normally what happens, team, like for example, you have a data in the on premises, right? So this data you are taking it to the cloud platform. So you're saying, Krish, I'm having all the security controls in the cloud as well. I'm having a security control for encryption, I'm having a security control for access control to the data, I'm having a security control called as a proper monitoring, I'm having all the possible security controls. But if you don't have a proper security control for the specific cloud threat called as a, or the cloud vulnerability point called as a management console, will your data be safe, team? Like, see, I take my data to the cloud platform, I basically put all the proper security controls there like the on premises, but I don't have secure or security for my cloud management console. It can be AWS console or Azure portal. So obviously what happens, team, it can lead to data breach, right? So anyways, if there is an unauthorized access to the sensitive data stored in the cloud happens due to some inadequate security measures or misconfigurations or lack of cloud security knowledge or whatever reasons it is, it can lead to a risk called as a data breach. And in fact, the biggest challenge we are having is the team, even if it is this is because of our mistake, or even if this is because of the mistake of the cloud service provider, at the end of the day, we are, that is the cloud service consumer, or basically the organization, is actually responsible and legally liable for it. So that is a most important point which we have to always remember, team. When you go to a cloud platform and if there is a data breach happens, maybe because of your employee mistake or your company's issue, lack of policy, the provider's issue, provider employees issue, whatever it is, if something wrong happens with your critical data or sensitive data, at the end of the day, you are the one who becomes liable and legally responsible for it. So that is the major challenge we are having. One is basically what we call as a data breach. Okay, the next most important challenge we are having is basically what we call as a services outage. So obviously, team, this is basically some of the lesser thought risk. Actually, we can say this is some of the lesser considered risk, but one of the major risk. Let me give an example, team. Now, normally what we do, team, like the same, when you basically have your own data center, you know that okay, if there is a downtime happens, you will be able to have a high availability strategy. You can have other data center, or if your server fails, you have a backup server like that. But if you go to the cloud platform, you are depending on something called as a services, right? In every cloud platform, you are depending on services. So what do we mean by that? Let me show you. See, I'm currently in my AWS console here. If you see my AWS console here, or maybe Azure console, whatever it is, you can see that I'm having a lot of services. That means whatever you are requesting, okay, whatever you are requesting, whether you are requesting for, let's say, whether you're requesting for a database, or if you're requesting for a storage, or if you're requesting for a server, if you're requesting for AIML, whatever you're requesting, the cloud service provider is giving you that in the form of a service. And what happens if the service goes down, team? Is it basically, can we do something if the service suddenly goes down? Like for example, let's assume that I'm using my Amazon EC2. This is a service for deploying VMs, right? So I'm using this service for hosting my instance or hosting my VMs. So what happens if the whole service goes down? So Krish, if the server fails, I have a backup server. But what I'm asking is that what if this whole Amazon EC2 goes down? You cannot say that, Krish, it will not go down. I will show you many scenarios that many services completely has went down. Okay, so that is a very common issue in the cloud platform, which is not so pronounced in the on-premises. At least in the on-premises, if some outage happens, we can basically, let's suppose that my web server goes down. No problem. I can basically have a backup server and I can configure a new web server there. But in the cloud platform, what is the control we are having? At the end of the day, the services are provided by the cloud service provider, right? So that is one major challenge we are having called as a services outages. That means any downtime or disruptions in the cloud services will lead to your operational halt, your impacting your business, your users, your customers. That is another risk we are having. Okay. And the next is we have a data loss. So normally, generally what happens when you basically go to the on-premises, we'll say that Krish, actually in the on-premises there's a chance of data loss. In the cloud, is it happens? Yes. If you basically go to a cloud platform and if you don't know how to protect your data properly, there is a high chance your data will it can be good due to misconfigurations, human errors. If you like, I'll just give you some examples of this team. Like if you just Google, not now, when you get time, if you Google the word called as, okay, common cloud or the most impacted cloud attack, something like that, your cloud breaches, you will see that a lot of companies will basically have it. Like for example, let's say, yeah, I'll discuss that. So for example, if you take the example of any organization who had a data breach or who had a compromise or anything happens. Okay, one major reason for it is misconfiguration. Okay, human errors and misconfiguration. Trust me, the biggest, if you check anywhere, if you check any kind of attack happens, almost 80% attacks happen in the cloud because of misconfigurations of lack of proper cloud knowledge. And basically, that is even more challenging the cloud computing. This is where I'm just always telling in all my sessions and all that team, even if you're a developer, if you're a tester, if you're an operations person, if you are a manager person, or whatever it is, you must have a proper cloud understanding of the risk and challenges. Otherwise, you will not be able to know what is the challenges we are having. See, when you talk about the word called as a multi-cloud, okay, that is basically very important. When you talk about the word called as multi-cloud, yes, that is beneficial, but again, cost, portability issues, a lot of things are there, so that's also a challenge. Then the next thing is basically what we call as a compliance violations team. Okay, we have something called as a compliance violation. So what is a compliance violation? See, let's take an example. Now you're saying that you want to comply with a particular regulation. Okay, let's suppose that we want to have a compliance regulation. Like let's suppose we have a PCI DSS or HIPAA or ISO, or maybe it means a standards or a compliance or whatever it is you're doing, or maybe you have to comply with GDPR standards, things like that, or whatever you're doing. Okay, so if you have to comply with the GDPR, let's suppose that you are an organization which is operating for your European customers, and you have to comply with the GDPR. Okay, and you're going to the cloud platform. So what now happens is that the cloud platform, the data breach, there is a data breach happen, or there is some kind of access issue happens, or there is some kind of data deletion happen, or something goes wrong. So GDPR authorities will not go to the cloud service provider, because you are the data owner. That will come to you only, right? It can lead to penalties, it can lead to legal consequence, other legal consequences, reputational damage, a lot of things are there, right? Then the next thing we are having is the team vendor lock-in. So what is a vendor lock-in? So in fact, in my whole experience, if I take my last 5 years case, okay, just want to share with you, correct me if I'm wrong, team, like in my last 5 years case, what I have seen is that when you basically go to a cloud platform, or when I have went to all my clients, when I basically talked with, in my conversation with all my clients or all my companies which I'm consulting with, the major reason what they were suffering is because they are stuck with the provider, even though which we don't think is like, for example, let's say now my company is basically going to a cloud service provider. Okay, and because I like the cloud service provider very much, and basically they are giving me value, I depend completely on them without thinking anything. I have a complete dependency on them. That means I utilize every service of the cloud service provider. I specifically go to their only their that particular vendor only services, like that. At some point of time, if that particular cloud service provider increase the cost, or maybe don't provide, or they don't provide us value anymore, if you want to basically go to another cloud service provider, that won't be possible to you. Why? Because you are depending a lot on the first vendor. Because you have a lot of dependency on the first vendor, or due to some reason, you are not able to move to another cloud service provider. And that scenario is basically what we call as a vendor lock-in. In fact, now I can see that many organizations are facing that with some specific cloud service providers. Let me give you a question here. Let me give you a simple example here, team. Let's suppose that I'm not saying this particular service, like for example, let's say if you go to Microsoft Azure, that's definitely a good cloud platform. That's one of the most growing cloud platforms in the world. And if you go to Microsoft Azure, if you're depending completely on everything in Azure, Azure AD, Azure Sentinel, Azure, everything in Azure, now far better. But if you take the example of some few years back, Trust me, if you are depending on Azure and suddenly if you want to move to AWS or some other kind of a vendors, trust me, it is super challenging. You have to face a lot of things. You have to rework your application sometimes. You have to re-architect your complete cloud profile, everything. So like that, this is one major challenge we are having called as a vendor lock-in. And obviously lack of control because you have a shared responsibility model, right? So you have a limited visibility for the cloud platform. When you go to a cloud platform, you are having a limited visibility. Let me give an example, team. Now, team, is physical security important for us? When you basically go to a cloud or on-premises, physical security to our data is important for us or not? Let's suppose
Yes.
you're saying that you want to comply with the PCI DSS. Obviously, out of the 12 controls we are having, one is physical security. But do you have any control over it? No. You are depending on the cloud service provider, right? So now you are going for a particular SaaS application. Do you have any control over it? Very limited. Like the same way, you have even more risk, a lot of risk are there in the cloud computing. So Krish, by the way you're saying all these things, I feel that let's quit cloud and let's go to on-premises. Don't think like that, team. At the end of the day, these are some challenges I want to keep you in mind, because so that next time when you go to cloud platform and thinking about cloud platform, you will have a proper visibility for all these things. Okay. And like this, team, you have a lot of threats also in cloud computing. Okay, like we can have a DDoS attacks. Now, obviously, when I'm saying this, people will ask me, Krish, that DDoS attack is not something which you have in the cloud only. It's also there on the on-premises. But don't you think that, team, DDoS attacks can be, or DOS or DDoS attack can be more common in the cloud? Because everything is exposed. At the end of the day, when you go to a cloud platform, you're exposing almost everything, right? So obviously, what happens? The chance of DDoS attacks and flooding of traffic and everything is basically, very common. And the next one is basically the most common kind of attack, we can say, account hijacking. That means what? If you don't know how to properly follow best practice, like let me give an example. Now, multi-cloud configurations are basically for high availability and all, but DDoS attack, see, if you have a auto scaling, or if you have a load balancing, if you have a CDN, or if you have a multi-cloud, this can basically help you to manage the attack up to an extent, but that is not a mitigation or a control. That will give you some time to respond. That's the only thing. Okay. Now, let me give an example, team. Now, let's suppose that if you basically go to an organization, this is what which I always feel. If you go to an organization and if you see that your organization is using the root account for their day-to-day operations, trust me, if you basically go to an organization and if that particular organization is using the root account, that is a primary account, root account credentials for their daily activities or daily management activities, trust me, the chance of compromise of that particular cloud account is basically way more, like almost like, I will say 50% more chance they have of getting compromised. Correct me if I'm wrong, team. What do you feel about this? This is just an example I'm giving you. Like if you use your root account for your, like, I have seen in very many small companies, I have seen this particular practice, that just because they don't want to take time to create one more user, they use a root account credentials for logging. Like this is an example for root account. See, I'm currently using a root account, but this is a training account, that's obviously, but still using a root account for all these kind of activities, whatever controls you're having, there's a high chance of compromise. So that is one major challenge we're having. Account compromise, this is not so commonly pronounced in the on-premises, right? Yeah, yes, Naveen, I'll tell you that. So instead of using the root account, what we have to do there? Okay, so Chris, you're saying that don't use the root account or don't use the primary account, either in AWS or Azure, don't use the primary account. Then what is the alternate? Quite simple. You have to go to the specific identity and access management of the company. Okay, either AWS or Azure, AWS IAM or Azure AD, whatever it is, you go to that particular service, you create a particular user, you add him a privilege called as administrator access. You basically add him a privilege called as administrator access and manage all the credentials or manage all the things with the that particular user. So don't use the primary account, secure it and keep it aside. That is just an example. So whatever ways it is, if there is any kind of a unauthorized access happen to the cloud account, it can be through phishing, social engineering, or weak authentication, whatever it is, trust me, account hijacking is a major challenge. The reason is because when you basically talk about the work of account hijacking, like I'll give an example. Now, I have a server, I have a server in my company. Let's say an example here. You can see that in my company, I'm having a server. Okay, I'm having a server here. So this particular server I am having, if I ask you, team, can we secure this server? You will say yes. You can put the proper firewall to the server. You can put a proper access control to the server. You can have a proper encryption for the server. You can have a proper anti-malware software for the server. Like this, you can have all the controls. So even if I put all these controls, just think about this. If I can get access to your management console, if I can get access to your AWS management console or Azure portal, whatever it is, will it basically override all these things? Will I be able to compromise your account? Yes. That's what I'm saying, that team, account hijacking is one major challenge. Protecting your account is very quite so important for us. Then obviously, malware injection, like, there's a lot of malwares, basically like the same way you have it non-premises, you have a lot of malwares in the cloud platform, right? And the next is API vulnerabilities. In fact, now, many organizations, in fact, see the Cloud Security Alliance, the, ISACA, ISIS Square, almost every organizations I know, they are basically, having more and more articles now on this API security. Do you know why people more focus more on this? So let's suppose that, let me give an example here. This is the cloud service providers infrastructure. Okay, let me just show you a picturizing example here. Just, bear with my drawing. I'm not so, I'm not an artist for sure. Now, this is the cloud service providers data center. Okay, assume that this is the cloud service providers infrastructure. Cloud service providers infrastructure. Okay, and basically this is your management plane. This is your AWS management console. Okay, we can call it as AWS management console or Azure portal, whatever it is. So here we have automation on top of this cloud service provider. We have automation. We call it as a orchestration layer. Okay, orchestration layer. So now let me give an example. So you are saying that create a VM, store some data, delete something, update something, modify something. So how do you basically tell this to the cloud service provider? Like, for example, you want to create something or you want to delete something. How do you basically tell this to a cloud service provider? You go to the AWS console and click on something, right? And when you click on something, how does this happen to the underlying layers? Do you know? Like, let me give an example. You're saying that you want to upload some file to Amazon S3 bucket. You want to delete a VM. Whatever you are doing, whatever queries you are giving to the cloud service provider, you are basically making something called as an API call. You're basically doing something called as an API call. Okay. So this API call is definitely okay. It's quite simple, looks very simple, but the thing is that if this particular APIs are not properly secured, it can definitely lead to a lot of challenges, because the cloud depends solely on APIs. The cloud platform is depending a lot on APIs. Like, for example, we have a lot of third-party APIs for the lot of applications we're using. A lot of means, in fact, your company also may develop some APIs and all. And for API security, that is one of the biggest challenge we are having. If you search for OWASP top 10 for APIs, you will find the list of API security, common security threats. Okay, so exploitation of weakness in an application programming interface or API for unauthorized data access or manipulation is now very common, because in the cloud platform, the cloud completely relies on APIs. Whether if you go to the AWS management console, command line interface, whatever it is, you're making an API call. And if that API is basically compromised, that means it can compromise your whole cloud account. So that's basically a very important called as a API vulnerabilities. In fact, now you can find a lot of articles, lot of things on the internet for this API security. So let's take it a little bit detail. Okay, advanced. The word says advanced means what? It's a sophisticated, you know, a very technical, technological, sophisticated technique. Advanced. Persistent. That means it basically happens for a long term. Threat. That means what? A threat which is carefully crafted and carefully exploited. Okay, a threat which is carefully crafted and carefully exploited, and basically targeting a particular company or a particular thing for a prolonged period without getting detected, by remaining undetected for a quite long time, is what we call as a advanced persistent threat. Okay, like for example, now I am able to, yeah, mostly like it can also happen for yes. So what I will do is that I am just somehow finding some vulnerabilities in your company network or something, and I'm entering your particular organization, and I'm installing some rootkits or backdoor something I'm installing. And what I'm doing, without get making any trouble to you, or without getting noticed by any of your security solutions, I take your data out of the company, or I continuously monitor every activity, your emails, your data, and everything. And once I feel I am getting detected, I can move into another form. Like the same way, I keep on roaming around there in multiple networks and collect as much as data as possible. And that is an example for an advanced persistent threat. Okay, it has multiple stages. So this is also common in the cloud platform, because I'll give an example, team. Now let's suppose that you have a Gmail. Okay, let's suppose we have a Gmail, or you have a Facebook. Do you know that when you basically go to Gmail and Facebook, occasionally you get messages called as please verify your recovery information? When, if I'm an attacker, I'm able to compromise in your account, I will not make you, I will not lock you out. What I will do is that I will change the recovery information. I will make sure that I get complete control over your account before I compromise you. Okay, like this, when you go to the cloud platform, you have a lot more things. These are some examples I give you. Okay, if you want, I can basically, like if you want to know about cloud computing threats, I will suggest you an article. Okay, see, I'll suggest an article. So whenever you get time, okay, just make sure that you go through. This is basically quite interesting. There is a document by the CSA, the Cloud Security Alliance, which is called as Top Threats in Cloud Computing Pandemic 11. This is the latest one as of now. So you can find the top 11 threats in cloud computing, and basically how we can basically counter that and everything. It's a really good thing. Okay, just go for this like this. Okay, now that is one thing, team. So what I'm trying to say is that you have a lot of threats and risk and everything like in the cloud platform. Okay, so like we have a lot of APIs, misconfigurations, data privacy challenges like this. We have a lot of challenges. Now comes the question here. So Krish, we are having all the security controls for this. Like for example, we are having proper security controls. We put a proper firewall, we put a proper access control, we put a proper monitoring, everything is there. So you have implemented all the controls. Okay, I agree completely that you have implemented all the controls there properly. But what about the effectiveness? That is my next question. You said that everything is there. You said that everything is there, everything is working properly, everything is done. But how do you verify the effectiveness of this thing? That is basically where you need something called as a cloud security assessment. Got my point, team? That is a major reason why I'm saying that whatever I know that okay, you're maybe your masters in cloud computing, your security, you're a security expert in cloud. So whatever it is, even though you have done all these things, are you sure it's basically there still? Are you sure it is working in the same way as you're expecting? Are you sure that the controls are able to give you the complete proper protection for that? So for that, you need to have a periodic and regular security assessment. So the cloud security assessment is a systematic evaluation of cloud infrastructure to identify vulnerabilities, assess the security controls, and ensure adherence to the industry best practices, enabling a proactive risk management and safeguarding critical data in the cloud environment. So I'll make this more clear to you, team. So it's a systematic evaluation. That means what? It's a structured step-by-step evaluation process. It's a structured step-by-step evaluation process which will help us to identify the weaknesses, to assess the effectiveness of our security controls, to ensure that we are basically properly adhering to the best practices, or your compliance requirements and security requirements and all. You can have more effective risk management. For all these things, team, we need to have a proper cloud security assessment. So generally what we're doing is that we are doing a proper and comprehensive evaluation of the security measures, protocols, controls, and everything we are implementing in the cloud platform. So either you're doing it in your company, or you're basically doing it in some other company, whatever it is. When you're doing this thing, what is the reason why we are, when you say cloud security assessment, that is just a generic term, right? So let me give an example. So if you talk about the word called as penetration testing, pen testing, That is also a cloud security assessment. Correct me if I'm wrong, team. When you say you're doing a pen testing, I would say that that is also a cloud security assessment. Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
See, see, when you basically go for any of these things, okay, whether if you're doing a scanning, or if you're doing a vulnerability assessment, or if you're doing a vulnerable your configuration review, or pen testing, or maybe compliance audit, or uh, or what we can say, logging and monitoring review, or encryption, what or verifying, all these things are basically cloud security assessment. Like, what is a scanning team? Scanning means, you're basically scanning your account for any kind of a weak points or basically lack of controls. Vulnerability assessment is what? Vulnerability assessment is a process of identifying known vulnerabilities. You are performing vulnerability, like, like the same way we perform the vulnerability assessment in on premises. Like, we have a lot of tools for it, right? Like Nessus, Nextpose, Qualys, got a lot of tools are there, right? Like the same way we are performing it on premises, in the cloud also we want to perform periodic vulnerability assessments. Configuration review. What is configuration review, team? That's basically a very common thing, right? Configuration review means that, see, reviewing the cloud environment's configuration, like, you want to verify the various settings, permission levels you have given, access control mechanisms you have given, like, identity multi, like if you have multi-factor authentication, if you have a proper monitoring for this, if you have proper alarms and alerts, right? So this configuration review will basically help you to ensure that the configurations align with your security best practices, and only authorized users have a appropriate access to your cloud resources, right? That's basically what we call as a configuration review. Then we have something called as a penetration test. You know what is a pen testing, right? You're trying to basically think in the perspective of an attacker. You basically pitch and, or try to find some weaknesses and see how it can be exploited. Then you do a compliance audit. I'll give an example, team. Let's suppose that you want to get certified for PCI DSS. Okay, you want to get certified for PCI DSS, or you want to get certified for SOC, you want to get certified for HIPAA, or you want to get certified for GDPR, whatever it is. So what you have to do, you have to make sure that your infrastructure in the cloud platform can comply with these things in a proper and effective way. So just when I'm talking about this, many people have a question which I have seen the last time also, is that, Krish, when you go to cloud platform, how do I comply with this? Like, for example, I want to make sure that I have a ISO 27000 compliance in the cloud platform, or I have a PCDSS compliance. Can you completely handle this compliance by yourself in the cloud platform? See, let's take an example here. Let's take an example here. See this, team. I'm just currently, I'm going to a website here. See, I'm going to a website here. You can see that this is the, in a very high level, this is basically the 12 controls we must have for PCDSS compliance. See, install and maintain the proper firewall configuration, do not use vendor passwords, and all this kind of stuff. Can you basically do all these things by yourself in the cloud platform? Like, for example, this is basically only can be done by the cloud service provider. Then this is basically something which is shared responsibility model. Like this, out of these things, a lot of things can, which is only done by the vendor also only, right? So how do I basically get a visibility over all these things? Okay, so we have to ensure that the provider's part is properly complying with the standards and all these things. So doing a proper compliance evaluation ensures that the organization's cloud environment, those things are which is in the provider control, and those things are in our control. These particular things are properly assessed, and it meets the business requirements and compliance requirements as per the policies. Then we want to periodically review our logging and monitoring strategies. We want to make sure that we are able to get all the things properly logged, monitored, and everything. And basically, if there is a security incident happened, we must be able to respond to it promptly in a proper automated manner. Like this, we want to, like, we also want to perform encryption assessment. Like this, we want to perform many of these things. All these things you see here are kind of a security assessments. Okay, like, it's not only scanning or vulnerability assessment. Whatever you see here, or even more, can be an example for a particular cloud security assessment. Yep. Now what we do is, the team, when do we perform this? That's the next question. When do we perform this assessment? So basically, whether it's any of these things, uh, okay, when do we perform any of this assessment? Okay, so the first thing is, the team, if you want to perform this assessment, okay, if you want to basically perform this assessment, okay, you can perform this assessment anytime you want. Like you can basically perform this assessment in a pre-deployment phase. Like for example, before you go to cloud platform, you're saying that if you want to go to cloud platform, before you migrate to your cloud platform or before you adopt a new service, we can do this security assessment in the cloud or for the cloud platform. We can see the cloud specific vulnerabilities and risk, or while you're deploying something, we can do that as a part of your regular process. You can do that. That's most important actually, because once you implement this thing, you want to make sure that you will be able to have a regular ongoing assessment. Like you want to make sure that you can have a continuous monitoring and regular security assessment for your cloud platform. Like it will help you to easily figure out the misconfigurations and all, right? And the next thing is that team, after significant changes, like for example, now let me give an example. So you're currently going to a cloud platform. Okay, this is your particular cloud platform we are having, and in the particular cloud platform we are having, okay, like it can be Amazon or it can be Azure, whatever it is, you are making a serious change, like you are changing the architecture. Okay, so basically when you go to a cloud platform, like for example AWS, okay, now I have changed my architecture, I have done a new three-tier architecture, or I have modified my architecture. So how do I basically that how do they impact my performance, or how do I that impact my security and compliance? So for that also I have to perform this in a periodic way. If there is an incident happened, after the incident, like in many scenarios, we basically perform this particular activity called as a cloud security assessment. Okay, now how do I do this? That's the next question. First thing to keep in mind, team, if it is done, mostly this is done by people inside the company, right? When talking about cloud security assessment, if you have a cloud security expert or AWS security expert in the company, that is the person who performs the normal assessment. But let's suppose that if you are basically calling in for a outsider, like third party expert, or maybe someone to perform this assessment in your company, it's very important make sure the team you sign an NDA before all the process, right? Because they are able to get access to your infra, they will be able to view a lot of things in your company. So obviously your team, what we have to do is that we have to make sure we perform up, or we basically sign up a proper NDA document, the non-disclosure agreement, before the person can basically start the process, right? And the first part of this particular, don't worry, I will show you all some of most of things in demo, don't worry. So the first part of this particular process is what we call as a preparation phase. Okay, if you want to perform a generic cloud security assessment, the first part is basically what we call as a preparation phase. So what is a preparation? Let me give an example. Okay, let me give an example. So let's take it this way. Now team, do you know why most companies use multiple cloud service providers? For high availability, for making the best out of each of them, for many reasons, right? So companies have to avoid vendor lock-in. So companies have a lot of cloud service providers, lot of regions, lot of data, lot of things in the cloud platform. When you say you're going to perform some kind of assessment in the cloud platform, the first and the most important thing is the scope of assessment. Don't forget, the first and the most important thing we are having is the scope of the assessment. What are you going to assess? What all things are basically, or what is the objective and scope, why you're doing this, and what all things are included in the particular visibility point, that vantage point, what all things are included, and what is objective is. Okay, now you're saying that the objective of this is to basically to see if we are complying with the PCI DSS. The objective of this is basically to ensure that we are having the proper security best practices. The objective of this is to make sure that we have a proper security for our data. Objective for this is basically for the for the customer satisfaction. For some reason you're doing this, as that's basically the objective. You clearly mention the objective of this. Okay, when you write a report on this, that's very important, team. When you write a report of the cloud security assessment, it's very important to make sure that team you mention the proper objective there. Okay, you properly mention the objective there, it's very important. Okay, so like for example it will be like this. Like for example you will write that, okay, this particular organization is having an engagement with our company to perform proper cloud security assessment for identifying and assessing, let's suppose, potential security vulnerabilities and risk and compliance. So something you will basically define an objective. And the next is the most important thing is the scope. Because if you're an auditor or if you're performing some assessment, be clear with the scope. So what is the scope? What do you mean by a scope on the assessment actually? First thing, which all cloud service provider my companies use. Like for example, some companies use only AWS, some companies will only use Azure, some will use GCP. So which all cloud service provider are part of your organization? Let's suppose that my company uses two cloud service provider called as AWS and Azure. Okay, now if I'm using AWS and Azure, do you use every regions or which all specific regions you're going to use? Like for example, let's say now I'm going to my AWS account here. Okay, in my AWS account here, you can see that I have multiple regions here. See, is it mandatory that you have to go for all the regions? No, which all specific regions you are going to use. So that is also very important. So in this particular scope of assessment I'm doing, which all regions are included? Is it like for example, is it Mumbai? Is it Singapore, North Virginia? Like this, what all regions are basically included in the, and which all accounts? Okay, I want to have a pause on that particular thing. Team, do you know why? Do you know in most of the cases, companies always have a multi-account strategy? I have never seen any company who basically, have a want to have a secure architecture. They always go for a multi-account strategy. Do you know why the companies go for a multi-account strategy? Like for example, if they go for AWS, they will not have one single account for the whole company. They have multiple AWS accounts for different projects, different teams, sometimes different, as like this. They will have different things. For dev, they have different. So for test, they have different. For each project, they are that means the reason is to avoid single point of failure and basically to have more resiliency and proper, proper separation and all. But the thing is that when you have multiple accounts in most companies, I have seen that they will have a separate account for each project, and in each project they have a separate account for maybe product dev team, test team, operations. For everything we have different accounts, and like this, we have different cloud accounts there, not one particular single AWS account for everything. We have different cloud accounts there. We can manage them centrally using some solution, but I'm trying to say is that, so we clearly understand, are you going to perform this particular assessment on only one account, or how, like for example, in my company I'm having 100 accounts. Okay, let's suppose that in my company I'm having 100 AWS accounts. Are you going to perform this on this 100 AWS accounts or not? Let's say I'm going to perform this assessment only for the specific accounts on that. So what we will do, I'll take on 10 accounts. But Shivan, there is one point here, like for this particular purpose, we rarely use sampling. We basically do it on all the accounts. The reason is because if you say like you want to audit some 1,000 computers, you can take a sample. But when you go to cloud platform, I strongly recommend you do it on every account. There's no sampling process won't specifically work on that, because that one thing you're missing is going to be a trouble always. Yeah, which I feel means just my personal suggestion. Okay, that's it. But what I'm trying to say is that you have 100 AWS accounts. Out of this, you want to take 10 specific accounts. This is the scope of this thing. This is the, or these accounts are basically what I feel as most vulnerable. So let's perform it on this. And out of these 10 accounts, I am doing it for the Mumbai region or maybe Singapore region. So like this, you specify the which all providers you want to use for this assessment, then which all regions or account you basically want to include as a part of it. Then the next most common important question is the team. Specific services and type of data stored. Let me give an example. Now, you say that I want to perform this on Mumbai region. If you see Mumbai region, they have more than 300 services. Okay, Mumbai region have more than 300 services. See, every region, see, a lot of things are there. Do you want to perform security assessment for all the services? Like you want to you want to assess security of everything here. Like for example, okay, database. Okay, let's take all the all the 7 or 8 databases. I will take all these 4. Like this, do you want to perform all the services? No, you want to perform that on specific services and certain locations where proper data are stored. Okay, so basically that is the scope, and basically the objectives of this can be for identifying vulnerabilities or identifying compliance gaps, identifying data security threats. That can be the objectives. So understand the team, this is very important. When you basically make a report, okay, this is most important to understand team. When you make a report, please note this point very much, that see this, when you first thing you must always have is what? The first thing you must always have is You must have a proper introduction. Okay, you must basically have a proper objective of it. Then you will have a proper scope of this, right? Scope includes, it can be which all regions, or maybe it can be all accounts or regions you're used by your company, or specific accounts, all services, specific services, all data or specific data. Like this, you have to define the proper scope. Okay, now team, now are you clear with how to write an objective and scope? It's nothing like, if you want to get a template of an objective, how to write that. Let me show you an example. This is not the same thing, but I'm just giving an example of an objective. Just want to make sure you are getting this clear. Like this, definitely, yes, yes. See, like this, you have to, means not like this, but you have to make a proper objective. This is the reason why we are conducting the assessment. So in your report, in your assessment report, you have to, first thing is that you have to clearly mention the objective there. This is basically objective of this thing. We are basically trying to, or maybe like, is to identify this thing, or maybe is to, let's say, is to ensure the compliance with PCI DSS version number, particular version number X. Like this, it can be an objective. Is it clear, team? That is the first part, having a proper objective. Okay, and this must not be modified later, because we are performing this assessment from the end to end based on this particular objective and scope. So be clear with this. Okay, in your report you're writing, be clear with this. Write a have, and the scope clearly mentioned which all the things. Okay, maybe all AWS accounts, or maybe all, you know like account number, this account number, account A, B, C, like whatever it is. Like this, you clearly mention which all accounts, which all service, and everything. So scope and introduction or objective is most important. Okay, that cannot be changed. The next thing, so you have talked about objective, or why we are doing auditing, what all things are included. Now, most important thing, this is the phase where sometimes it can be a problem with you and the manager, the people you are performing the assessment. When you do this thing, next thing would be, very most people miss this thing actually, but this is basically quite important for us, called as assessment methodology. Okay, assessment methodology. Okay, that means, okay, now you're saying that you want to perform this assessment, you want to do this, you want to do that, but how are you going to do that? Like, you have many ways for doing it, like simply talking to the people. Like, let's suppose that now, if I'm if my let's suppose that I have an employee called as John. Okay, in my company I'm having an employee, he is my security architect, cloud security architect, or solutions architect. And we have another employee called as Sam, he is my compliance expert. We have another person called as Tom, he's basically having something. So what I'm doing is that, are we going to simply talk to them and just ask them things? That is also part of assessment, right? I interview them. I'll ask them, okay, John, have you done this, implemented this? John is saying yes, then it's fine. Sam, have you basically ensured data security there on the particular data? He said yes. So are you going to, how are you going to perform this? Are you going to just interview the key candidates of this particular process, or are you going to review some documents and verify based on that? Are you going to manually go to every account and specifically and verify the configurations? Are you using some automated tools for this? I'll give an example. See, I'm just doing it like, let's suppose I'm doing it like this. I'm saying that I am going to perform review policies and documents. Then I'm saying that I'm going to manually review AWS configurations. Then I'm going to, you means this is what I have mentioned. But after I have mentioned these two things, if I am not mentioning about the tools I'm going to use, that can be legal issue to you. You know, right? I am an assessor. I'm coming to your company. I told you that these are the two ways I am going to assess your company. I'm going to assess your cloud security, or maybe last interview key stakeholders. So if I'm going to perform this assessment in these three ways, I'm telling them this is how I'm going to perform the assessment. Okay, like what is this manual review AWS config? Okay, I want to make sure IAM is secure, so I go to IAM. Just an example. Okay, I go to IAM, I take an user, I open the user. Okay, I verify this particular policy. Okay, this policy is having a proper policy there. Yeah, that's the next thing, Ramya. I'm going to say that. See, I'm going to verify. Are we having any suspicious roles? I'm going to see. I'm going to go and manually review everything. Okay. So if you say that you're doing this, and if you use some other tools, like for example, now I'm using a tool called as Prowler, or I'm going to use a tool called as a Cloud Custodian, Cloudsploit, PMapper. I'm using some third-party tools. But if I don't mention that here, like I have to clearly mention that using native AWS tools and third-party assessment tools. And you have to mention the subcategory which all tools are there. Like this, if you have to clearly mention that these are things you are going to use for performing the assessment. If the organization don't have a visibility on what all tools or what all techniques you are going to use for performing the assessment, that will be a bigger challenge for them, right? Because I have gone to multiple organizations, most companies will agree, but I have gone to multiple companies where though they don't want to use any tools there, they don't agree with basically do using any tools there. They are not happy. Yeah, they're not, they don't trust the tools. I've seen many companies who don't allow us to use any tools there. They want us to do it in a particular, so it's like that. Okay, so you have to clearly mention the scope of the objective, the scope, then the assessment methodology. Okay, that's quite important for us team. Okay, in some cases organizations don't want to maintain policy docs, and this is challenge to the, obviously that is the gap you have to figure out and tell them. Okay, as an assessor, as a person who is doing the auditing and assessment, you are not the one who always develop policy, but you can help in the policy process for sure. But there must be a proper policy. I will show you a very good cloud policy. Don't worry, I'll show you some sample cloud policy for this. But we have developed that for sure. We have to advise that we have developed it for sure. Do you know why? Let me give an example. Now there is an organization. There is an organization we are having. Okay, now you are the CISO of the company. Okay, what you're doing is that you are just simply telling your AWS expert, or you're just simply telling your AWS expert that hey, you have to make sure you properly develop us, you have to properly follow all the security best practices. You make sure your cloud account is secure. But that doesn't satisfy the business, right? How do I ensure that whatever this guy is doing is properly supporting the business? We have to have a policy for governance there. We have to develop a proper cloud policy. Don't worry, I'll show you the cloud policy. Okay, that's very important. Okay, now the next thing is that, okay, so scoping is very important. Okay, as a part of scoping, you understand, and once you understand the scope, then on that particular services, what all resources are deployed there. Okay, now I'm saying that I am performing the assessment on service number A, or account number A, account number B, and account number C. And I'm going to perform it for AWS EC2, AWS RDS, AWS VPC, AWS S3. So I'm going to perform security assessment for AWS services for account number A, B, and C. And these are the 4 services I'm going to assess: EC2, RDS, VPC, S3 on Mumbai region. So in these services, or in these services we are having, what all things are deployed? Okay, how many VMs we are having, how many databases we have deployed, how much amount of storage we are having, what is the architecture. So all these things you must be clearly understanding, and based on this is what we are developing the plan. Like I said, you must have a proper methodology for that. What is a resource? So obviously you have a doubt in this. So Krish, how do we do this? First thing, Rohdas, you're not going to perform this for all the services. You ask the company, you ask the company on what all things are basically there. The next thing is that resources, right? What is a resource? Resource means, now see, let's suppose you are an outsider. Okay, I'm just giving in both the perspective. You are an outsider. Do you know what is happening in that company? As an outsider who came to the company, do you know what is happening in that company? No, I'm sure you know. Like, I am coming to your company. Okay, I am coming to your company. I don't know what you're doing. how you are handling things. Even if you tell me all these services are there, I don't know about the criticality, I don't know about anything. So I want some people in the company for doing this to assist me in that or support me in that. That is a resource. Okay. Or like this can be everything. Like this can be the policies, other documents, personals, the people's, okay, personals in the company. It can be the AWS expert, it can be security engineer, whatever it is, who is basically going to, or these people or these particular things are going to help you in the process part. That's basically resources who all must be involved in this particular process. Then this is super important. Okay, now you basically go to the company and you're saying that you won't do this assessment, but can you do it for an unlimited period of time? No. Like if you ask me, Krish, how much time you took for this in a company, like as I said, it definitely will based on the company. But let me give an example. If I am doing this, it takes sometimes, if it's a very small company, it's almost a week. So up to 3 months sometimes it has took for me. 1 week to 3 months it basically took for me to do the whole assessment, because 1 week is basically very rare, but obviously max. But this is for me. Okay, make the scope clear, make the scope more wider and clear. That's very important. Okay, that's very important. So methodology is very important. And in fact, out of this resources, okay, now one more thing I missed to say. See, in the resource part, now I'm an audit. So let's suppose Krish is an auditor. Krish is an auditor. I want to audit my cloud accounts. Okay, so my question is that, can Krish do the auditing? Can Krish do the auditing with full permission to the account? Can Krish get full permission to this account if if you want to perform this assessment? Like, see, let them give me administrator access. Is it fine? I'm an external auditor. I'm coming to a company for auditing or assessment. Let them give me a complete, administrator access to that. No, no, right? What particular permission okay, I want to have read-only access to these things. I want to have a auditor access, right? Like that. Then timeline is very important. You define the timeline based on scope, methodology, availability of resources. Like somebody was asking me before, like I guess somebody was asking me for that particular policy part. Like Satyan was asking me that. Krish, what if there is no policy there? Obviously, it will take more time. Okay, so timeline is based on whatever you want them to perform. Then last thing, obviously, what you're going to perform, what all activities you're going to perform. Okay, like this, we must develop a proper plan. Okay, we must develop proper plan. It's quite easy. This is a sample template. Like this, you can basically, you can expand this for sure. You can expand this quite easy. This is just a template. Make it a story. Start expanding it. And okay, Krish, can you basically give me some templates? This is the template. Start expanding this for the business. Okay, do we have a standard format for this? No. This, whatever I'm saying, must be included as a part of it for sure. But there's no specific, okay, one particular format for all. No, never. If you ask me, Chris, give me an example for a cloud policy, I will give you a template. I'll show you how to, or I'll clearly give you a template for that. But if you ask me about, how to write a report like this, it is, or how to make a proper strategy like this, it is specific to the company. Okay, that's it. Okay, now the next thing. Okay, yeah, Jay, I'm coming. That's the next thing I want to discuss. To see, team, there's a question I got. To what level of technical knowledge required by the auditor or gap assessment? Let me give an example. So now, see, this is not audit. I'm talking about assessment. Okay, assessment is not a so formal process. If you want to become an assessor, or if you say you want to become an auditor, whatever it is, my point is that if you don't know about AWS, or if you don't know about the cloud platform and the risk in the cloud platform, can you perform this in a proper way, team? Whatever tools you're getting, can you perform this thing properly if you are not aware of the platform you're going to perform? No. So means If you are not, if you don't have a knowledge, obviously you will miss a lot of things, you will face a lot of glitches, you have to blindly trust a lot of people. So I strongly recommend you have a knowledge in, at least a high level knowledge in these platforms. Best practices you can get from somewhere. I'll show you from where you can get the best practice and all, don't worry. I'll show you everything in practical, don't worry. Okay, that assessment part I'll show you in practical. Okay, but it's very important that you must have a proper best practice things. Okay, that's it. Okay, you must have a knowledge of that, that's very important. Not mandatory, but you must be aware of the solution, that's it. Because I'll give an example, so actually I was quite long back. Okay, I was actually working on only on AWS and Azure. Okay, so I had requirement at that time came for a particular specific cloud. I don't want to give the name of the cloud provider, but I have a particular I got requirement for a particular cloud vendor also. Because I have knowledge in AWS and Azure, I was able to review the whole that particular cloud platform also in 1 or 2 weeks. No, I mean it's just it's a private thing actually. It's quite just at least one platform knowledge is mandatory for this team for sure. Okay, now I hope you are clear with the phase one, right? Preparation phase. Objectives, scope, methodology, resources, timeline. Clear all of you team? Can we write this now? It's easy right now, we can write this, right? There is no point of confusion here. You clearly can write this as per your company. Krish, can you basically tell me how to write an objective? Just English. Why you're performing this? For a particular assessment like this? Or are you doing it for some compliance? Or whatever it is. What methodology you want to use? How many people or what all things you need for this particular process to happen? Okay, that's it. Now the next phase is basically what we call as a assessment. Second phase is basically what we call as a assessment. Assessment includes a lot of things. Okay, assessment includes a lot of things. First thing, okay, as a part of the assessment, you may have to review the current policies and protocols. Okay, you may have to assess or you may have to understand the current policies and protocols in the company. Let me give you an example. Like for example, when you go, the first step in any security assessment of cloud platform is to understand the current security posture of the organization of the cloud platform. Okay, which all security best practice security policies they are following for their cloud platform. That is the first thing. Okay, let me give an example for that. See this team. This is an example for a cloud computing policy. Okay, this is an example for a cloud computing policy of a company. Okay, this is a template. This is a template. Okay, this is just a story about what is a cloud computing, what are challenges they are having in cloud computing, why this policy they are having. What? So I'm just I'm not going to show you how to write a policy, but this is a good template for that. To whom this policy is applying to. So this policy is for the only the employees or maybe the customers also, whatever it is. Then in policy we will use a word. Let's suppose if I use a word called as personal data further, what do you mean by personal data? In this particular policy, if I'm using a word called as sensitive personal data, what do you mean by this? When I say in this policy, what is this is a data classification, right? Like this. Okay, now which all data is basically set to means this is the data classification process. Which all data is considered as non-confidential, like for example any data which is basically dates of college closures, staff names and contact details, school names, that is basically non-confidential. Now, what is confidential? Okay, documents which are basically having proper legislation protection, like some particular resource documents and all. What is critical documents? Obviously biometric data. Like this, they have clearly mentioned what all things are sensitive, what all things are confidential, what all things are non-sensitive. Like this, they have classified. What all laws and regulations are applicable for this particular policy. In our cloud policy we are applying as per our business, what all things are applicable for us. Then what is the criteria for choosing the cloud service? This is an example for a cloud policy. I'm not explaining this, I'm just giving an overview. See, any data which is classified as critical must be only inside the company. It must not go to a public cloud platform. Any data which can be made public can be also taken to the cloud platform. Which all data can be taken to cloud platform? Which all data we have to keep it in the on premises. Okay, like this we have everything clearly mentioned in the policy. What basically we have to do if there is a breach happens? We must have a proper checklist for all these processes. There is a proper checklist. This is a sample cloud policy. Okay, this is sample cloud policy. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that you have to review the organization's cloud policy. That's the first step. The first step in any security assessment is to understand the current posture of the organization. So you review the current cloud AWS security policies, protocols. So cloud security policy is a category, subcategory of cloud policy actually. That's good. Yes. So what I'm trying to say is the team. So when you basically go to a cloud platform, okay, it's very important for us to basically have a review the proper policy. Okay, that's the first thing. Okay, so we have to basically see that in the policy we are having. Okay, now you are saying that you are having a policy. In the policy, we have to clearly understand what clearly understand. Okay, what all areas, like, what about the IAM? Do we have anything specific to that? What about the compute things? What about the storage? What about database? Like this, we must clearly understand what all aspects of cloud security are basically mentioned in the cloud security policy in the company. Okay, then what? Once we basically know this, the next thing is that we basically have to perform the proper assessment. This is basically where we have to perform the proper assessment. Now, let's take it a bit more detail. When you say you want to perform some assessment, okay, you're saying that you want to perform some audit or assessment. Okay, you must have some baseline for this, right? If you want to perform this, you must have some baseline for this, right? Like, for example, let's say you want to basically assess the security of AWS S3 storage. You want to you want to basically do the assessment of VMs or EC2 instances. You want to perform. So okay, now in S3, what all things you will look? Tell me. If you say that you want to perform assessment for Amazon S3, what all things you will look? You need a checklist. See, you need a checklist. You need to have a proper checklist, right? So Krish, from where I can have a checklist? Okay, now for having a checklist, there are multiple options you're having. Okay, one of my personal favorites is basically what we call as a CIS benchmark. Okay, if you want to have a baseline security checklist, you can basically go for something called as a CIS benchmark. Don't worry, you'll get this in the website. Okay, CIS benchmarks, this is a really good thing. When you basically go for CIS benchmarks, okay, what happens? Let me show you what happens here. See, they clearly tell you all the process. Okay, they will clearly tell you all the process. That means that what all specific security checks you have to perform for IAM. Now, okay, if you want to perform assessment of AWS IAM, or if you want to have a security best practice for IAM, these are the proper things. Okay, you have a 22 best practices for IAM. Don't worry, I'll explain that. We have a 22 best practices for IAM. If I scroll down, we have a 4 best practices for S3. We have a 11 best practices for logging. We have a 16 best practices for monitoring. Like this, we have some like this. Okay, Krish, do I use this exactly the same way? Never. Okay, so it's not mandatory that we have to perform this thing exactly in the same way. That means what? That means that this particular thing we are performing or we'll customize as per our business. Now, let's suppose that in S3 we have 4 things here. What are the 4 things? Okay, you must have a strong S3 bucket policy. You must have a MFA delete in the bucket. You must have a proper classification for data. Don't worry, I'll show you how to classify data in the bucket. Then you must have a block public access. So we have 4 points here. Can you tell me some two more points, team? Tell me some two, three more points. Encryption. Ensure that all your critical data is encrypted with the help of KMS encryption. That is basically where we call it. Yeah. Then we have a object lock enabled. If there is a requirement, we have object lock enabled. We may have to use a replication. So you customize this as per requirements and make a bucket logging. Like this, you can basically make a customized list of things you want to perform. So make a checklist. These kind of documents can help you with that. For example, if you want to, if you want to have a security checklist for S3, I have basically shared multiple things on my AWS, my LinkedIn account. I'm just, like, let me check that. It's some quite time back. Just give me a minute. Let me show you something here. See this, team. Now, see, AWS has already given you that. AWS has already given you that. See, disable access control, then implement least privilege, bucket logging, not publicly accessible, use IAM roles. Like this, there's a checklist there. See, you will get the official documents there also for security best practices. See, these are official security best practices. And if you want to, this is a very good document. AWS security best practices. This is a very good document. AWS foundational security best practices. This contains a lot of things. If you basically go to S3, or let's say S3, see, you have a lot of things. See, these are the security best practice for S3. Neha, for PT, I took a webinar long back. Don't worry, I take one more, and I'll just plan zone and I'll take. Okay, this is basically where we're doing assessment only, because we only have 2 days, right? That's why. But team, like, if you have some queries or concerns, always get back to us. No problem. I'm just there. You can always get back to me. No problem. I'll share my LinkedIn profile also. You can always get back to me if there is any queries or anything you're having while performing this. Don't worry. Never. See, this is you have to make a checklist, Rota. That's all. See, how can we remember it for all the things? We have to make a proper checklist for the company we are doing. Like, for example, if you're performing it for your company, make a proper baseline checklist which you want to perform regularly. And don't worry, I will show you tools which can do it for automatic and manual. Don't worry, both I will show you. Okay, I'll give you the tools for this, either for AWS tools and Azure and third-party tools. I'll show you tomorrow. Never. But yeah, for interview perspective, yes, it's good to know most of the things, because obviously, you get always some challenging questions like that. Okay, so this is a very good document for that. Okay, from this you can make a checklist. Checklist is quite easy. You can use an Excel sheet also to make checklist, right? You will not need this, because I will show you how to perform this checks in a automated manner. Okay, tomorrow I will show you how to perform the CIS benchmark checks, PCDS compliance check, HIPAA check, and all these things. How do you perform this thing using AWS tools and using third-party tools? I'll show you tomorrow in live. Don't worry about that. We can do that. Okay, so this is the first part. Okay, now if you're doing it manually, make a proper checklist. Okay, now let me give an example. See, let's take a security best practice here in IAM. Ensure that no root user account access key exists. That means that in AWS account, you must not have a root account access key. Krish, I am not an AWS guy, so how do I know that? Don't worry, they have completely given steps here. So how do I verify this, team? How do I verify this, yes or no? I go to the account. I go to the security credentials. If I go to this, you can see that there is a root access key for root. See, there is access key for root. That means that checks has failed. This has failed. That means what? There is an issue. As per the best practice, we are not supposed to basically have an access key for the root user. But in my account, you can see that we are having one. That means it's a challenge, right? Like this, you can basically make a checklist. And always keep in mind, this is just a reference checklist. Don't have to basically follow this exactly, or it's not mandatory we have to follow this exactly. Based on kind of data we are handling, kind of services we are using, what country we are in, what security or kind of requirements we are having. This have to be customized. But this documents like CIS benchmarks, AWS foundational best practices, then Azure best practices, Azure benchmarks, NIST documents are there. ISACA is basically providing a document for auditing. So these things are basically going to help you a lot for making a proper baseline checklist for this assessment, not auditing, assessment. This will, like, just to summarize some examples here, like the tools like CIS benchmarks, NIST is basically providing AWS or Azure cloud tools are there. Then we have a AWS cloud security foundation baselines are there. uh, like this, you can find multiple things, you can find multiple baselines. So use these things as a starting point to create a checklist, and that is something strictly based on your company. Okay, and that must be revised every year based on your changes happening. Okay, that's it. For identity and access management, network security, for all these things you must have a proper baseline checklist, and these documents will give you a proper thing. Okay, now the next thing people ask me is that, Krish, you said we have to have a checklist for that. See, when you basically go for a checklist, the first thing is that you can't basically use the same thing. Okay, you take if you want to make it as simple as the way you want, just make a checklist like this. Okay, but in any which ways it must contain all the info, like you can basically AWS accounts, or maybe which all checks, then like regions, like this, surveys like this. Make sure you include all the key areas, that's all. There's no predefined thing like you have to add all these things, but make sure whatever checklist you're making, it contain the region, the service name, then permission, security, baseline practices, and all these things, that's all. Okay, make a proper checklist. In fact, then one major thing is basically we have a CCM and CAIQ. Tomorrow, don't worry, I'll show you that. I'll explain this. This can, but again, this is specifically, this is generic. Okay, so we can use a CCM CAIQ, then NIST framework, CIS benchmarks, AWS best practices, foundational best practices, all these things. From this, you make a checklist. It's not specific to this. You can make any of these things, but don't blindly copy anything from another company. That's a very important thing. I repeat, do not blindly copy this from other company, because they have a different cup of requirements, you have a different set. And if you basically simply try to copy from them, it can make you in trouble for sure. Okay, that's a key thing. You know how to make a proper starting point, objective, scope, and all the other things we have discussed. Then you know how to make a proper checklist. Now nothing is pending, you know how to make a checklist. But the only challenge you're having is that, okay, only challenge you're having is that you say, oh, you want to perform all these things. Are you sure you can perform all these things in a manual way? See, we have thousands of, or maybe hundreds of things to check. Let's suppose you have a 4 accounts in your company, or maybe let's suppose you have 5 accounts in your company. Can you perform this manually? Go to every service, verify the checklist, use it? Hectic, right? Quite hectic. So we have quite a lot of tools for that. If you take AWS, we have a tool called as AWS Audit Manager. Then we have AWS Audit Manager, AWS Athena, AWS, guard duty, IAM Identity and Access Analyzer, Security Hub. If you go to outside, we have a Scout Suite, Prowler, PMapper, Resource Counter, SkyArk, Trailblazer, Packbot. Lot of tools are there in the market. Okay, so tomorrow I'll show you the tools. Like, these are tools I'm going to show you tomorrow, which we'll discuss. We'll go to something called as a AWS Audit Manager. Then we'll basically go to Security Hub. Then we'll discuss about the Macy, Guard Duty. Then we'll discuss about CloudTrail, IAM Access Analyzer. Then we'll go to Prowler, Scout Suite, and let's see what else we can further. We can basically go. Let's add more and more things. Hope you are able to understand, and basically I know I'm taking, I took almost your 2 hours, and basically it's beneficial for you, I hope.